Before the apocalypse arrives, three choices are given. Which one would Lin Dong pick? 1. Unlimited food including drinks and alcohol. 2. A golden desert eagle with an infinite magazine. 3. A can of hairspray that makes him look ridiculously cool after one spray. Lin Dong already knows that in 5 hours an extreme ice age apocalypse will descend. Humanity's living environment will grow increasingly harsh, a zombie virus will erupt, and order and rules will gradually collapse. In the apocalypse, food scarcity is the most critical issue. Lin Dong directly chooses the first option. Success. Host now possesses unlimited food. Lin Dong's heart races with excitement. He silently thinks, give me an iced Americano with less ice. The next second, a cold cup of coffee suddenly appears in his hand. He is thrilled, it's real. This is amazing. The apocalypse is coming, and the rules of survival are about to change. So now he doesn't have to keep living this miserable life. It's time to switch things up. Starting today, he is not eating beef. System, give me 10 beef skewers. He starts munching on the beef skewers. Just then, a message comes in. I passed my postgraduate exam. There's something I need to make clear to you. We're breaking up. You should know by now that we're no longer in the same world. You're just a wage slave earning minimum wage every month, while I'm a graduate student now, destined for a bright future. I know this is cruel to you, since you've been supporting me financially all these years while I studied for the exam, but I've also wasted years of my youth on you. So we're even. Don't contact me anymore. That's it. Reading this cold message, Lin Dong feels a pang of pain, but then he sneers. Zhao Yufei, you're going to regret this. At that moment, the system's prompt rings out again. To ensure the host's survival needs, the system will provide daily check-in rewards at midnight. Options include weapons and equipment, materials and energy, physical enhancement, and more. The host may select one reward per day. Right now, Lin Dong is actually looking forward to the apocalypse. In the old world, he was just ordinary. But in the coming apocalypse, he is going to turn things around. He rides his electric scooter back to his rental apartment. While waiting for the elevator, a disdainful voice reaches him. Hey wage slave, stay away from me. You reek of sweat. He looks over and sees Shen Wanyu dressed in her bank uniform, holding her nose and glaring at him with utter disgust. Shen Wanyu is his neighbor. He lives in 301 Faust, while Shen Wanyu and her newlywed husband Wang Sheng live in 302. They got married a month ago. He caught a glimpse from afar back then. Shen Wanyu in her white wedding dress was absolutely stunning. This woman, both in looks and figure, easily scores a 90 out of 100, far surpassing the ex-girlfriend who just kicked him to the curb. She is the kind of woman that makes a man think of Cao Cao's infamous desires. Now, seeing Shen Wanyu, a faint, inexplicable smile slowly creeps across Lin Dong's lips. Shen Wanyu frowns, her face full of disgust. What are you looking at? I'm already exhausted after a whole day of work. Having to smell a bottom feeder like you after clocking out is just bad luck. Her husband Wang Sheng is a high-level executive at a company. The two of them consider themselves social elites and look down on someone like Lin Dong from the bottom rung. The elevator arrives just then. Lin Dong steps inside. Shen Wanyu clearly intends to wait for the next one. Right before the elevator doors close, he suddenly lets out a cold laugh. If you get hungry, remember to come find me tonight. The doors slide shut. Shen Wanyu jolts slightly, then is flooded with rage. Who does he think he is? Going to find him just for a bite to eat? Crazy. Lin Dong arrives at his room and starts rummaging through the wardrobe. Since the extreme cold apocalypse is coming soon, he had better find the down jacket and bedding first. Bang, bang, bang! A frantic, violent knock pounds on the door. From outside came Shen Wanyu's shouting voice. Wage slave! Explain what you meant by that just now. Come out! Don't hide in there and stay quiet. Just then, Wang Sheng heard his wife's voice and opened the door to ask, What's wrong, Xiaoyu? Why are you knocking on that wage slave's door? Seeing her husband come out, Shen Wanyu fumed and repeated what Lin Dong had said. Honey, that wage slave actually harassed me. I'm gonna make sure he can't live here anymore. Wang Sheng was furious. This kid was asking for a beating, wasn't he? Xiaoyu, don't worry. I'll make sure he... Before he could finish, Lin Dong opened the door and stepped out. Wang Sheng looked up angrily, only to meet Lin Dong's cold, furious gaze. Half his anger vanished on the spot. Lin Dong looked frail and weak, while Wang Sheng, ed to hard labor all year round, was much tougher. If a fight broke out, the outcome was pretty clear. Wang Sheng's attitude shifted, and he forced a smile at Lin Dong. You're back? You must be tired after a long day at work. Get some rest early. With that, he hurriedly dragged his bewildered wife back inside and shut the door. Shen Wanyu glared at her husband, furious. Honey, why did you run? Didn't you see the way he looked at me? Are you scared of him? Wang Sheng shook his head, his expression serious. Wife, you're wrong. I'm not scared. I'm thinking about our safety. We're social elites. We have a happy, perfect family. Someone like him, at the bottom of society, he's bound to be jealous. If you push him too far and he goes crazy, what if he retaliates against us? Shen Wanyu shuddered at the thought, a wave of fear washing over her. Don't worry, Wang Sheng continued. From what I can see, as long as we don't completely corner him, he won't dare do anything. Let's just leave it at that. You have to always remember the happy person's principle of concession. We're happy people. When we run into someone like this, it's better to back off, he said. Meanwhile, Lin Dong had found all the thick quilts and cotton clothes. Then he locked the doors and windows, waiting calmly for the apocalypse to arrive. Night fell. The air was stiflingly hot. A sudden chill wind swept in, and goose-feather snow began to drift slowly down from the sky. Then the snow fell wildly, as if let loose, and in just half an hour the temperature plummeted from 30 degrees to 0 degrees, and it was still dropping. At the same time, Lin Dong's heart raced because it was midnight. Today's check-in reward options were as follows. 1. 10,000 sets of thermal clothing made from special materials capable of withstanding -100 degrees Celsius. 2. Wireless battery packs compatible with all electronic products on the market. A 1,000 terabyte USB drive containing all of Lan Shin's movies and short films. 4. A box of gum that once someone starts chewing, they just can't stop. Lin Dong thought it over and chose option 1. The temperature was dropping too fast, and staying warm was the top priority. Though, seriously, was the system messing around? How could the last option be this ridiculous 2 days in a row? After making his choice, Lin Dong focused his mind, and a set of black thermal clothing appeared in his hand. The fabric was quite unique. It had the comfort of pure cotton and the softness of cashmere. Once he put it on, his eyes lit up. This thermal wear didn't just keep out the cold, it actively generated heat. Even his exposed hands and feet no longer felt cold, making it feel almost like spring. With his basic needs for warmth and food fully met, Lin Dong sat peacefully by the window, watching the snow blanket the city in silver. Snow in June. Many Southerners ran outside joyfully, curious and amazed by the sudden heavy snowfall. Some built snowmen, others had snowball fights. After all, Jiangcheng was a southern city where snow was rare, and plenty of people excitedly switched to down jackets and rushed out to play. Suddenly a scream rang out from downstairs. Lin Dong quickly looked over, and his pupils involuntarily contracted. A young man's face suddenly broke out in pustules, and every patch of exposed skin was covered in them. The people around him scrambled away, staring at him in fear. Save me, save me. Within less than half a minute, the pustules burst, the man's body stiffened, and he fell dead with his eyes wide open. He was gone just like that. The crowd scattered in all directions. The man wasn't an isolated case. Soon many others discovered pustules growing on their bodies. In an instant, the neighborhood fell into chaos. Lin Dong frowned, carefully observing these infected people. They had all been playing in the snow just moments ago, so the snow was poisonous. From contact with the snow, it took less than 5 minutes for the pustules to erupt, and death followed within half a minute. He just didn't know if the poison in the snow was contagious. He couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath. This was intense. In just that short time, over a dozen people had died downstairs, and the air was filled with wailing. As the cries grew louder and more desperate, the lights in the apartments of sleeping residents flicked on. People ran to their balconies, shouting at the top of their lungs, "It's the middle of the night. What's all the noise about?" But, after seeing the situation clearly, everyone was stunned. Lin Dong opened his phone to check the news and found that the whole world had gone into chaos. Topics like university poison were trending on the hot search, with countless people begging for help and wailing in despair. The residential community group chat was also in disarray. "Help! My daughter just touched the blood too. Does anyone have medicine? Please save the kids. What the hell is going on? Is this the end of the world? Calling 110 is busy. Calling 120 is busy too. What are we supposed to do? Neighbors, don't be afraid. Disasters are only temporary. Believe that we'll be saved." The whole world was falling apart. Who was going to save them? Does anyone have bottled water and snacks? I'm willing to pay a fortune for them. The smart ones had already sensed that this would be a disaster that wouldn't pass easily. It had only been snowing for an hour, and the snow was already half a meter deep, with no sign of stopping. So stockpiling food and water became the top priority. No one knew yet whether the snow poison could seep through clothes and into the skin, and nobody dared to test it with their own life. That made the supplies in the community their last hope. Lin Dong checked the doors and windows, making sure no snow could drift in, before he slept peacefully. The next morning at 8 a.m., he woke up on time, walked to the window, and looked outside, only to shiver uncontrollably. The bodies from yesterday were all buried under the snow. The snow level had already risen past the first floor, and the temperature had dropped to -30 degrees Celsius. The only silver lining was that the snow had stopped for now. But the sky was overcast, and he had no idea when the next wave would hit. He checked the facilities inside the house. As expected, the water, electricity, and gas were all down. The poisonous snow was already terrifying enough, and now without electricity, in such freezing temperatures, the only thing keeping him warm was the down jacket on his back. But how many people could withstand this? Probably quite a few would freeze to death today. Lin Dong wasn't panicked at all. He stayed inside, eating hot pot and drinking hot tea while casually browsing the community group chat. After a night of torment, many in the group had gone silent. Whether taken by the snow poison or the cold, no one knew. Only a few desperate pleas for help remained. But clearly, no one was paying attention. He didn't go out for the rest of the day. At 12 o'clock, a new reward arrived. Today's check-in reward options were as follows. 1. A golden desert eagle, equipped with an infinite magazine. 2. A boost in strength level. 3. A bedroom sled that could glide over ice and snow, allowing unimpeded travel. 4. A can of carbonated drink that, once drunk, lets the drinker burp endlessly. The fourth option was still as ridiculous as ever. Lin Dong really wanted the golden desert eagle, but in the end he chose option 2. From this check-in, it seemed that rewards could potentially appear again, so there was no need to worry. He could just pick it next time it showed up. As for the strength enhancement, it had a very sci-fi vibe to it. He picked it to see what would happen. Once the reward arrived, suddenly felt a surge of power flowing through his body. A surge of powerful energy coursed through him. He punched the solid wood dining table, and a fist-sized hole blasted straight through it on the spot. He was very satisfied. His stats had improved across the board: attack, defense, speed, everything. Strangely enough, after throwing that punch, he didn't even feel any pain. For the next 3 days, he still didn't go out. Outside, the heavy snow fell on and off, already piling up nearly to his own window. And he finally managed to grind out the golden desert eagle he'd been craving, along with the bullseye talent skill. For the third reward, he chose the constant temperature furnace. It was a device shaped like a small stove, but only the size of a palm, emitting a faint blue glow. It didn't need charging or fuel. It came with a built-in sufficient energy source. The constant furnace's effect was that when placed indoors, it could keep the temperature within a 3-meter radius steady at 26 degrees Celsius. The downside was that it couldn't penetrate walls, but with 10,000 units, placing a few around the house would warm the whole place up. Lin Dong was speechless. Didn't this make his thermal underwear feel completely useless? Still, with this thing, at least he could take a bath at home. The first day's unlimited food supply had already included hot water. At that moment, his phone barely had a sliver of battery left. He noticed that in the owner's group chat, someone was already calling for people to head down to the underground garage to exchange supplies. That was actually a smart move. Although the underground garage connected to the outside, the entrance and exit were already blocked by snow. As long as he got close, he could go down through the safety stairwells from each building. Staying cooped up at home all day eating, drinking, and lying around wasn't a good idea. Lin Dong decided to go check it out. He put on a thick down jacket and headed out. Even though he wasn't cold anymore, he still had to keep up appearances. By now, the underground was packed with people. He did a quick estimate. The entire complex had 14 buildings, with over 2,700 residents, but only about 600 people had come down to the garage. That meant in just 5 days, the complex had lost that many people. Thinking about it, that didn't quite add up. The snow had fallen late at night, and most people hadn't been exposed to it. It was more likely that many households still had plenty of supplies and didn't need to come out to exchange yet. I have a 30,000 mAh power bank, still half charged. I want to trade for a bottle of mineral water. I've got a pack of premium cigarettes. Trade for instant noodles and bread. I have 1 ham sausage. I want to trade for fever medicine. Most people were trading for food and water, with a few trying to get medicine for their sick family members. After all, the temperature had dropped too fast and quite a few people had caught colds. Even though the mineral water was mostly frozen, it could still be melted by burning some children's school books. That's when Lin Dong spotted Wang Sheng and Shen Wanyu, the couple. Both of them were bundled up like dumplings, only their pale, sickly faces visible. In front of them, they had laid out some gold and silver jewelry. It seemed they were To stay alive, Shen Wanyu had already taken out her dowry. It had been several days since the apocalypse began, and everyone knew that money was useless now. In the old world, one couldn't get by without cash, but in this world, money was completely worthless. No one even bothered to look at their stall. Shen Wanyu looked up and saw Lin Dong smiling. Her mind couldn't help but recall the words he said at the elevator that day. If you get hungry, remember to come find me at night. Could it be that he knew it would snow heavily? Lin Dong didn't go up to them. He didn't like being too forward. As he wandered around, he spotted a woman whose beauty rivaled Shen Wanyu's. His eyes lit up. Even though she was bundled up tightly, her facial features were very delicate, though her lips were a little pale. This woman was alone, curled up in a corner. In front of her were some designer bags and cosmetics. Just like Shen Wanyu and her husband, no one was even looking at her stuff. As he observed, he eavesdropped on others' conversations and pieced together a few useful pieces of information. The first was that the toxins in the blood were only contagious through skin contact, not airborne. That was good news. Otherwise, who would dare open their door to go out? The second good news was that someone driven by hunger had done something bold. As long as one held an umbrella and didn't touch the snow, one could walk in areas where the snow wasn't deep. The only problem was that the snow on the community roads was too deep now, over 3 meters. No one could physically wade through it to search for supplies. Of course, many were talking about modifying vehicles with household tools to try to drive out. Lin Dong thought that was all nonsense. With this snow depth, even an excavator would struggle, let alone a car. This also showed just how desperate people were for supplies. The third piece of news made him a bit worried. Those who had died from the blood toxin all had white pupils, and their bodies were frozen in twisted, horrifying poses. Lin Dong couldn't help but wonder if these dead would all turn into zombies. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Once the weather warmed up and these bodies thawed, they might come back to life. It looked like from now on, whenever he had the option to boost his strength, he should just go for it without thinking. The stronger he was, the better his chances of survival. Just then, a woman from earlier, Lin Shu, approached him and asked, "Hey, handsome, do you have any bread or instant noodles? I bought these designer bags for tens of thousands. Can I trade them for some food?" Lin Dong looked at Lin Shu's face and said, "Your stuff is useless. Can you offer something more practical?" Lin Shu's expression turned sour. She knew full well that at a time like this, designer bags and such were meaningless. Everyone was bundled up like dumplings and starving. Who had the mind to dress up that bags? She was all alone, living alone, no man to rely on. In this brutal time period, the only thing of value was herself. But she wasn't ready to give herself away so easily. "Handsome, how about this?" Lin Shui pondered for a moment, then pulled a black plastic bag from her pocket. Lin Dong took the bag and glanced inside, immediately speechless. It was filled with all kinds of socks. She called him handsome, but in reality, she still saw him as a loser. He lowered his voice, "Handsome, these are all worn, haven't been washed. Get lost." Lin Dong tossed the plastic bag aside. Then he pulled a piece of bread from his own pocket, only to shove it back in. "I live in Building 5, Room 301. If you want food, come to my place. We're all adults here. You should know what I mean." Hat. He turned and walked away from her. Lin Shu frowned, wavering. If this were before the apocalypse, she wouldn't have given a loser like him a second glance. She never expected that, now that the end had come, a loser would actually tell her to come to him. Though she was furious, what could she do? He had the food. Lin Dong continued wandering around. Every 2 minutes, the fire escape door burst open, and 3 burly men charged out. The leader had a face full of rough flesh, clearly a ruthless type. All 3 held kitchen cleavers. Leng Meng waved his hand. "Take it all." With that, he led the charge, rushing toward the nearest stall. The stall owner was an old woman, with a can of elderly milk powder on display. Leng Meng snatched it away. "Hey, why are you stealing my stuff?" she cried. "Someone help. Robbery." The old woman clung desperately to Liang Meng's arm, trying to reclaim her milk powder, her only hope of trading for food. "Old hag, you're asking for it." Liang Meng's eyes flashed coldly. He raised the cleaver and brought it down hard. Thud. Blood sprayed. The old woman's head was embedded with the cleaver as she collapsed lifelessly. "Murder!" someone screamed. In an instant, everyone panicked and scattered in all directions. Lin Dong watched coldly, moving slowly with the chaotic crowd toward Building 5. After so many days, order was finally beginning to collapse. In the face of survival, all kindness and humanity would vanish completely, and today's murder would be the beginning of the chaos. "What are you standing there for? Rob them, damn it!" Liang Meng had killed for the first time too, but as a thug his mental fortitude was decent. He barked at his two lackeys, then charged at the nearest person, swinging his cleaver. He was completely berserk. He didn't even care if the person had food, just kill them first. The two lackeys, emboldened by their boss's momentum, also began to slaughter indiscriminately. When Lin Meng killed, Lin Shu had already bolted for home, not even bothering to grab her designer bag or ID card scattered on the ground. Wang Sheng was dragging Shen Wanyu in a frantic run, but everyone was running. The pampered couple soon found themselves bumped into. Husband! Husband! Shen Wanyu was terrified. Her legs so weak she couldn't even get up. Wife, get up! Wang Sheng desperately tried to pull her up, but he was just as hungry and couldn't budge her. Seeing Liang Meng charging over with a knife, Wang Sheng gritted his teeth. Wife, wait for me. I'll go find help. With that, he let go and ran off without looking back. Husband! Husband! Save me! Shen Wanyu was shocked. She never dreamed her newlywed husband would abandon her. As the thug was about to rush over, she was scared into tears. Lin Dong saw this and immediately rushed over to help her up. This was his prey. He couldn't let her die like that. Come with me. Feeling his strong, powerful arm, Shen Wanyu finally saw it was Lin Dong who saved her. He was filled with gratitude. Liang Meng's killing spree was indiscriminate. Whoever was closest got cut. It wasn't until everyone in the underground garage had fled that the three brothers stopped, looking at the 7 or 8 bodies lying on the ground, and the people clutching severed arms and legs while wailing. Liang Meng let out a cold laugh and hacked them to death one by one. Big Brother's a beast. This move really works. The two lackeys quickly scoured the underground garage, gathering a good amount of food. Their plan was simple: come down, slash people, and loot. Everyone else would be too scared to run, leaving their stalls behind for the taking. Liang Meng calculated that the food they'd grabbed would last the 3 of them 2 days, but it wouldn't be easy to steal again. These people would be too scared to open their doors, so they'd have to find a way to break in. Let's head back first. Just then, another lackey suddenly ran over holding an ID card, a lecherous grin on his face. Boss, I found something good. 5th one. Work for me 3 meals a day. Liang Meng took it and his eyes lit up. What a beautiful woman. This is a mugshot. All those women who rely on beauty filters, makeup, and editing to go out, mugshots always expose them. But this woman named Lin Shu on the ID has an oval face and bright, captivating eyes. A top-tier beauty, no doubt. The only pity was that the address on the ID wasn't in Jiayuan compound. She might be a renter here. No telling which building or unit she lived in. The lackey who found the ID was named Zhang Peng. He winked and chuckled. Boss, I haven't touched a woman in days. This top-tier one let me have a taste. Liang Meng snickered. No rush. Let's get the food back first, then make a tool to break doors. We'll hit each house one by one. We'll ruin it into her sooner or later. And there are plenty of women in this compound. The 3 of us can have our fill. The 3 of them headed home with sinister grins. After Lin Dong took Shen Wanyu away, he blocked off the safety passage door before returning to building 5, 3rd floor. It wasn't until they reached her doorstep that Shen Wanyu finally found the strength to stand steady. She immediately broke free from Lin Dong and angrily pounded on the door. Wang Sheng! Wang Sheng! Open the door for me. You coward! How dare you have the nerve to abandon your wife and run home alone? Open the door for me. Her voice was loud and frantic. Lin Dong chuckled as he opened his own door, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed, enjoying the show. Wang Sheng, who had been trembling inside his room, heard his wife's voice. He hesitantly peered through the peep-hole. Seeing only Lin Dong and his wife, he finally mustered the courage to open the door. Xiaoyu, you hurry, come inside. Otherwise those guys might charge over again. Wang Sheng acted as if he hadn't been the one to abandon her and run. He hurriedly tried to pull his wife inside. Shen Wanyu wasn't having it. She shook off her husband's arm and pointed at him, cursing. Wang Sheng, are you even a man? Before we got married, how did you swear your vows to me? When danger came, you abandoned me and ran off on your own. I must have been blind to marry you. Woo-woo. As she spoke, she started crying. Seeing Lin Dong watching from the sidelines, Wang Sheng's expression turned sour. He forced a smile and said, It's like this, Xiaoyu. I wasn't scared. I went to find help, you know. It's just that no one was willing to help me. I really had no choice. I ran back to grab some tools to come rescue you. You have to believe me. Xiaoyue, then why did you close the door? Shen Wanyue's question was a killing blow. Wang Sheng was completely speechless. Shen Wanyue continued sobbing. All the food and drink at home is gone. Even my gold bracelet was lost just now. What am I supposed to do? I'm still young. I don't want to starve to death with you. At this moment, Shen Wanyu was utterly helpless. Wang Sheng was equally helpless. Even though he fancied himself a social elite, a high-end professional earning hundreds of thousands a year, he had absolutely no solution for this situation. Suddenly Wang Sheng's gaze landed on Lin Dong, who was holding back laughter and enjoying key drama. Only then did he notice something off. This kid looks great. Ruddy complexion, not a trace of having gone hungry. Lin Dong, do you have any food at home? Wang Sheng asked tentatively. Lin Dong honestly admitted he did, and plenty of it. At this, even Shen Wanyu stopped crying. Her eyes lit up. Great, Lin Dong, can you spare us some food? Lin Dong flashed a bright smile. But of course, that was a no. He pulled a can of cola from his pocket, opened it and took a gulp, letting out a satisfied burp. Drinking ice-cold cola in winter was pretty awesome too. Wang Sheng and his wife's eyes nearly popped out of their heads. Their parched mouths couldn't help but moisten. They were drooling. This stuff was pure treasure in the apocalypse. Before, you wouldn't give me the time of day. After the apocalypse, you can't afford to look down on me. And this only proved one thing. Lin Dong had a massive stockpile of supplies at home. See, who would be dumb enough to flex with a can of cola? Bro, Lin Dong, look. Wang Sheng put on a fawning smile. We're all neighbors. As the saying goes, a close neighbor is better than a distant relative. As long as you're willing to share a little with us, once this disaster is over, I'll get you a job at my company. How about that? 6,000 a month. No, 8,000 in salary. Lin Dong snorted. Idiot. This guy still hadn't woken up to reality. Seeing that the cola in his hand had only been sipped once before freezing solid again, Lin Dong helplessly tossed it back into his own room, then pulled another can from his pocket and kept drinking. Wang Sheng and his wife's eyes had already turned green. They were even more convinced that Lin Dong had a ton of supplies. Shen Wanyu bit her lip. Lin Dong, how about this? We were willing to buy it. 1 bottle of water, $100. Anything edible, we'll pay 10 times the price, okay? Lin Dong snorted again. You're an idiot too. Wang Sheng and his wife were furious but dared not speak up. Then what will it take for you to be willing to share a little food with us? Wang Sheng asked helplessly. Lin Dong squinted, a faint smile curling on his lips, and looked at Shen Wanyu. How about this? My place has been a mess these past few days. I need a woman to help me clean up. I can hire sister-in-law as my maid. Come to my place every day from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, specifically to take care of my meals and daily needs. As for pay, I'll provide sister-in-law with 3 meals a day and allow her to take 1 loaf of bread and 1 bottle of mineral water home each day. Shen Wanyu's face instantly flushed red. She cursed. Lin Dong, you're going too far. Why should I clean your place for you? You're looking down on people too much. We're all adults here. No need to spell out the ins and outs. If she and Lin Dong were left alone in a room together, she'd be devoured clean without a doubt. 3 meals a day would probably turn into 2 activities. Wang Shengji was furious too, but he still held on to some rationality and didn't throw a punch. Frowning, he said, Lin Dong, this definitely won't work. How about this? Your sister-in-law and I will help you clean the place together. We'll definitely get it spotless. Lin Dong spread his hands. My place doesn't welcome men. If you're not happy with it, then forget it. With that, he closed the door. After all, he had food and drink, and he wasn't old. He had all the time in the world to play this game. Wang Sheng and his wife exchanged glances. Then Shen Wanyu exploded again. Wang Sheng, you abandoning me and running away. That's not over between us. With that, she stormed off home in a huff. Wang Sheng could only hurry after her to soothe his wife. By evening, Lin Dong woke up and got out of bed, deciding to cook himself a hot pot. Tripe, lamb, shrimp paste, yellow throat, and everything else he could want, all there. Meanwhile, in room 302, after their argument, Wang Sheng and his wife, the room fell into silence once again. After all, arguing was exhausting. Now every bit of food and drink in the house had been completely used up. Arguing any further wouldn't help. Suddenly, Shen Wanyu sniffed the air. Puzzled, why did she smell hot pot? Was it an illusion? Wang Sheng also twitched his nose, shocked to his core. It really was the smell of hot pot. The two stared at each other. They were already starving, their stomachs pressing against their backs, and now the scent of hot pot only made them hungrier. Wang Sheng quietly cracked open the door and finally confirmed the smell was coming from Lin Dong's place. His mind immediately started churning. Honey, how about you go work for Lin Dong? Chapter 6. Securing the 07 Maid Rules. Shen Wanyu's eyes bulged wide, staring at her husband in disbelief. Wang Sheng, do you even know what you're saying? That day, her husband had abandoned her to save his own skin. That night, he was actually asking her to go work for Lin Dong. Wasn't that just sending her to sleep with him? A wave of indescribable disappointment and cold swept through her, leaving her too numb to even get angry. Wang Sheng knew full well what it meant to send his own wife to work for Lin Dong, but he was just too hungry. In over 20 years of life, this was the first time he'd felt hunger to the extreme, to the point where he didn't even have the will to argue. Earlier, he'd hoped to rely on trading supplies, but now that hope was completely dashed. His only chance to survive was to rely on his wife working to earn him a single piece of bread. Don't get worked up, Sayu. You'd just be tidying up his place. Tizol. If Lin Dong dares to do anything to you, just scream for help, and I'll hear it and rush in to save you. Shen Wanyu had no energy left for a big fight. The cold in her heart was far more intense than the cold in her body. This was what they meant by silence is greater than death. Looking back, her husband had once held a decent social status, been gentle and polite, and quite attentive to her, the perfect husband in the eyes of family and friends. But when disaster truly struck, she finally saw Wang Sheng for what he really was, a coward, heartless, and ungrateful. For a bite to eat, he was willing to hand over his own wife, and even then he had to put on a hypocritical mask. Seeing his wife like this, Wang Sheng quickly explained, Xiaoyu, I'm not lying to you, you have to leave me. Remember the happy person's retreat principle I told you about? We're happy people. If we just give a little ground, then, so you're willing to give up your wife too? Shen Wanyu's tears fell again. It was that same happy person's retreat principle, wasn't it just Wang Sheng's excuse for being a coward? If he had any real ability, he could have just robbed Lin Dong outright, instead of letting them both starve here. No, that's not it. Why won't you listen? Go then. Wang Sheng tried to explain further, but Shen Wanyu had already struggled to her feet, her eyes icy cold as she stared at him. Fine, I'll go with Lin Dong. With that, she turned and walked toward the door. Wang Shen, Gu reached out wanting to grab his wife, but stopped himself. When Shen Wanyu realized her husband wasn't even trying to stop her, her heart completely died.